Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to day 4 of Climate Action Week. I'm really happy to see so many of you back joining us again today. Today we have a really exciting lesson about rain gardens. So let's get started. As always, we're going to start with one thing that we learned yesterday. Now, as always, don't worry if you weren't able to join us yesterday, because the lesson recording is on our website and you're more than welcome to watch it at a later time. So if you weren't able to join us, that's okay, you can watch later. But if you were able to, can you tell me one thing that you remember learning from yesterday? Yesterday, we had my colleague Nicola sharing with us all different types of houses, the different benefits of different building styles. I remember the triangle house the most. Not trying to give too much away to anyone who hasn't watched it yet, no spoilers, but I thought the triangle-shaped house was very cool. And also the yellow one. Lots of people are saying that they remember learning about sustainable materials and different types of insulation, and that the first house with solar panels roofs was made in the 1990s. Also, what materials would be good for building an eco home? And all of this knowledge is really good for your challenge that you're going to do later on. Hopefully, you've already started working on it. So now, before we get started with today's amazing lesson, let's test your knowledge of climate change with some questions based on yesterday's lesson. If you weren't able to join us, you can just guess, that's okay. Let's see how many we get right. Right. What would not make this house more sustainable? If you think adding solar panels to the roof would not make it more sustainable, 2 hands up. If you think adding a large extension would not make this house more sustainable, put 1 hand up. And if you think adding more insulation to the loft would not make this house more sustainable, put your hand on your head. It's a nice looking house. I wonder which one you think would not make it more sustainable. We spent a lot of time yesterday talking about things that would make a house more sustainable. So this one is a bit tricky because it's what would not make it more sustainable. Lots and lots of you are saying 1 hand up, adding a large extension. Shall we see if we're right? Ta-da! You're very right. Adding solar panels would allow the house to generate its own renewable energy, which would make the house more sustainable because less greenhouse gases would be released when powering the house. And adding more insulation to the loft would mean less energy was needed to keep the house warm, which makes the house more sustainable. But adding a large extension or making the house bigger would mean that more materials would be needed to build the house, and also more energy would be needed to run the house because it's a bigger area. You'd need more energy to stay warm. It would also increase the roof area, which would mean more water runoff when it rains, which can then increase the risk of flooding. We're going to talk more about how we can reduce the flooding risk from homes today. And today we're very lucky to be joined by Eve Armstrong from Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh, who's going to take us on a garden tour to see how plants can help us manage the effects of climate change around our homes. A huge thank you to Eve for joining us today, and of course all our friends at the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh for making this lesson happen, especially since the weather is a little bit wet out there. So Eve, I hope that you're comfortable and warm. If you'd like to join the lesson now, and you can get started.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kat. Yes, I am staying nice and warm. Luckily, I've wrapped myself up. But as Kat said, it is pouring rain here today. Is it raining where you guys are as well? You can pop it in the chat and let us know what the weather's like. I've heard the weather's not great all over Scotland today, but some of you might be a little bit lucky. But it's actually quite good that it's raining today, because today we are going to be thinking all about rain and what we do with rain and how the rain is changing here in Scotland. So here at the Botanic Gardens, I'm at the Botanic Gardens here in Edinburgh. My name is Eve, like we said before, and we've got this amazing nature-based solutions team. So nature-based solutions are ways of using plants and nature to help us fight our climate change problems. So we're really lucky because we've got this huge garden. We can do lots of experiments to try and find out what works and what doesn't and what is best for here in Scotland. I'm going to take you to a few different places in the garden today so you can see some of these nature-based solutions in action. And then you might want to think about including them in your design of a home that you'll be talking about later on. So where have I brought you? I have brought you to the very glamorous location of the toilet block. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth have I brought you here? Well, the reason is it's a brand new building here at the Botanics. And by building something brand new, it gave us the opportunity to try out some of these nature-based solutions. And then what we're thinking about is what happens to water when it rains. So, like I said, a perfect example today, we've got lots of rain falling on our building. Before this building was here, there were plants and grass. The rain would fall and it would get soaked up by the soil, by the plants and things like that. Well, our building is built to be waterproof, which means when the water falls on it from rainfall, it's got nowhere to go. So just like other buildings, we're capturing it in guttering and then it's coming down these drain pipes here on the side. And usually what would happen, would end up going down into our storm drains in our streets, running down and eventually ending up in rivers and the ocean. Now, we have a big problem with rain here in Scotland because the way it rains in Scotland is changing. And we know that for sure because we have a Met Office station here at the Botanics. Kat's going to show you a picture of what that looks like. And the Met Office are the people here in the UK who measure the weather really carefully, who take very accurate measurements, and then they use that to make predictions about the weather. So you can see the picture of what our Met Office station looks like. You can see all the different machines and all the different instruments that we take measurements with, and we measure loads of different things. And one of those things is rainfall. Now, you could take measurements yourself in your schools if you wanted to. There are lots of different ways to take these measurements, but the Met Office have these materials because they're doing it really, really accurately. So we've got a graph, which should be on the next slide for us, Kath, and that shows how the rainfall has changed here at the Botanic Gardens over the last few years. Can anyone look at the graph and put in the chat what you think is happening to the rainfall? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it staying the same? Let's see if we've got anything coming in the chat. Someone said going up. Very, very good. Does anyone agree? We've got loads and loads of people saying it's going up. And you're absolutely right. One of the big things that is happening because of climate change is we're getting more rain here in Scotland. The problem with that is that we get more rain, which means when more rain falls on our buildings, particularly when it falls in big storms like the one we're experiencing today, what happens is those storm drains get overwhelmed. There's too much water going into those storm drains, and that means that that water has nowhere to go, and we end up with floods. So we have done something very interesting with this building. We have created what are called stormwater planters. And you can just see the top of it here. I will show you a little bit more closely in a moment. But basically what we're doing is when we are gathering the water from our roof, it's coming down our drain pipes, but it's not going into those storm drains. Instead, it's going into a planter that is filled with plants. And so I'm going to grab you and bring you a little bit closer. It might get a little bit wobbly and it might get a little bit rainy, but we'll do our best. So over here on this side, you can see the drain pipe and it goes down, 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 down. And you should be able to just about see where it's coming out into our planter. We've got all of our lovely, lovely plants you can see planted. And if I take a big step back, you can see the planter itself. And you can see how big it is. You can also see over on this side, we have lots of a little box which contains lots of different equipment which is taking some measurements. All right, I'm going to pop you back under the umbrella so we don't lose visuals entirely. So This is what we've got here. We've got these lovely plants. And what happens is the rain comes down the drain pipe, ends up in this planter, and the plants can use that water. It soaks up that water, uses it to grow. And then we store any more water that it doesn't need down in the bottom of that planter. That means that that water isn't ending up straight in those drains and contributing to that flooding. It's getting stopped here and used instead. What we're measuring in here is the moisture of the soil, how much water is in that soil. And we're doing that because we're trying to see how effective, how good are these plants at soaking up that water? Is the soil getting too wet and they're not soaking up enough? Is it too dry and they're soaking up too much? Because we're trying to work out what are the perfect plants to put in these planters so that they soak up our rainwater and stop our flooding. Now, this planter here has been planted to make sure it looks really, really beautiful. It's got lots of lovely flowers and things like that, but you could plant all sorts of things in a rainwater planter like this. You could plant herbs and spices to use in your kitchen. So you could have basil to put on a pizza, or rosemary to make your Christmas roast, or even some mint and make your own mint choc chip ice cream. Or you could even put something like trees in here and see how they work. One of the things we're experimenting with here at the Botanics is what works best and what different things we could use in a planter like this. But we're also thinking about how different planters and different shapes of planters could be effective. So I'm going to take you around the back of this building so we can look at some other planters. Once again, this might be a little bit wobbly and a little bit seasick making, but we're going to make our way over there. I'll give the camera a wipe so you can see me a little better, and I'll show you those ones. So I'm going to grab all my things, oh my goodness, and we are going to head around the back. Alrighty, so as you can see, very glamorous part of the Botanics I have brought you to today. Here we are. And these are our other planters. So get you down here, get you here. Oh my goodness. And then let's give you a little wipe. Aha, I think you can see me a little better now. Perfect. So we've got our new planters here. They're a little bit hard to see, but I'll give it a little tilt down. There you go. You can see they're on two different levels and they look quite different. And that's because we have different things growing in here. Whoop. Ah, don't fall over. Perfect. On this side, we've got something called sorrel growing. You can see it's got all these amazing long bits on it, but actually what we love is down here, there is some delicious sorrel. Sorrel is an edible plant. So this is like one of the herbs that you can eat. It's got a kind of lemony, tasty flavor, and you put it in salads quite a lot. So that is really, really good. We've also got over on this side, oh, you can just see it, a very small little plant that's just starting to grow. This is woolly willow. It's a tree. And the reason we're trying to grow trees in these planters is because growing trees next to your houses can sometimes not be the best idea. They have these big roots that can go down into the soil and then into the foundations of your house and start causing some problems. If we grow them inside these boxes, instead the roots are contained. They can't go anywhere. And that means you could grow a tree right next to your house. It would help cool your house down, provide lots of lovely shade, and it wouldn't damage your building as well. So we're experimenting to see if this is working or not. Here we've got these two layers because we want to see if we can plant some things here and then let the water drain into a second one. So you could have plants that like different amounts of water in different places. Now, stormwater planters might be a little tricky for someone to do. You need to learn about plants. You need to be able to plant plants and look after them. Oh my goodness, that wind. Thought we were about to lose the camera there. Well, what you could do instead is you could install a water butt. So we should have a picture of a water butt for you to see. But basically, they're just huge, huge tubs that you can collect water in. This is a picture of one in a school garden. And instead of putting a planter at the bottom of your drain pipe, you just have a big bucket where you collect the water. Then you can use that water, often they even have a little tap on them. You can use that water to then water the plants you already have in your garden or wash your car or pretty much anything apart from cooking and eating. Brilliant. So lots of things that we can do with the water that falls on a building, but that's not the only place we have trouble with water. Flooding can happen even places where we've not built new buildings. One of the places in the Botanic Gardens that has been a real problem is one of our main paths through the Botanics. And that's because the Botanics is built on two kind of little hills. And then this path goes through the valley in the middle. And as you can see from that picture, it tended to flood a lot, and really, really lots, because when the rain fell on those hills, well, it would just run down to the valley and collect there. So what we have done is we have built a rain garden. Now, I wanted to take you live to the rain garden, but because it exists in this little dip between hills, as well as collecting lots of water, it blocks out lots of signals. We have no Wi-Fi there, no mobile internet, barely any phone signal. In fact, it's basically an internet dead zone. So I had to go a couple of days ago and pre-record it for you. So I'm going to switch off my camera and microphone, and Kat's going to play that video for you now so you can have a little look at the rain garden, and then I'll be back in a few minutes to chat to you some more. This is our rain garden here on my right, and its job is to soak up all the water so that it doesn't flood this path over here on my left. Making it was pretty straightforward. We basically dug a big ditch, put all that soil here in the middle to make a little mound that's a physical barrier between the water and the path. Then we filled that ditch with really fast draining soil, and we'll talk a little bit about what makes a fast draining soil a little bit later. And then we filled this area with lots of plants. We've got a huge variety of plants, little ones down at the front, medium-sized bushes and shrubs in the middle, and then even big trees at the back, things like alder that really love damp soil. Their job is to soak up all that water to make sure that it doesn't end up flooding our path. Now, we talked about Scotland being a bit rainier than it has been in the past, but actually that rain doesn't all fall at the same time. It's not just a little bit more rain every day, it's times when we get lots and lots of rain, and then times when we get no rain at all. So our rain garden has to be really good at absorbing loads of water when it falls, but then also surviving for a couple of weeks when it doesn't rain at all. Can anybody guess, what do you think the rainiest month in Scotland is? Can you have a little think? Which month of the year do you think we get the most rain? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. Just have a little think in your classes. Okay, have you guys got a guess? Once you've got guesses in your head, I'm going to show you some graphs. They're going to appear just now. And those graphs will show you a few different places in Scotland and where they have the most rain. And as you can see, actually the rainiest month in Scotland is October. That really, really surprised me. Did it surprise you guys as well? I definitely would have guessed something a bit more wintry. Maybe February or March. Those feel like rainy months. But October is actually our rainiest month, pretty much across all of Scotland. But you can see it depends where you are. And it might be slightly different where you are as well. Now, this rain garden has been really, really good at its job. In fact, since we built it, the path has never flooded again. Not even when we had a huge rainstorm, when about a month's rain fell all in about 30 minutes. Can you remember the last time it really, really rained where you were? Maybe at school or at home? Think about what it felt like. Were you out in it? Did you get soaked through? Did things start filling up with water? Were there rivers flowing down the street? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to just put some ideas in the chat of what it was like when it rained really, really hard where you were. I'm going to go off camera and mic for a couple of minutes to let you feedback to us and let us know what it was like. One of the things we're monitoring here in the rain garden is the soil moisture, how much water is getting down into the soil. And that's because we're experimenting with two different kinds of soil. Here on the right-hand side, we've got soil that has lots of gravel in it. Adding gravel to the soil means that water will drain through it really quickly. It's a bit like when you pour water onto sand at the beach and it just disappears completely. On the other side, we've added some more humus. Humus is like dead plant material, and it's really good at holding on to water. Now, you might think that we wouldn't want that in a rain garden, but remember I said the pattern of weather we're getting here in Scotland has really changed. We're getting these big flood events, but also times with no rain at all. And we have to make sure that the plants in the rain garden can survive those droughts where there's no rain at all, in order to absorb the water when it rains again. That means that actually it might be better to have a little more water retention, a bit more holding on to that water in our rain garden. So we're measuring this just now and trying to work out what is the best mix of soil to use in a rain garden here in Scotland so we can help to advise other people. Thanks for joining me to explore the rain garden a little bit. I'm going to pass back over to future me, who's live in the garden, so that I can show you a few more cool places and interesting ways that we can make our gardens more climate resilient for the future. Amazing, thanks to Past Me for showing you the rain garden there. And I'm sorry I couldn't take you there live, but at least it was a little bit less rainy when I filmed that last week. You might have noticed that I have moved location. And the reason I've chosen to do that is because I wanted to show you somewhere where we have lots and lots and lots of plants. So this is just around the corner from where we were before. But it lets us learn about something very interesting, because something fascinating about our rain garden is it's one of the coolest places in the botanics. And I don't mean cool as in really interesting and awesome. I mean cool as in temperature cold. It gets a lot cooler there, so it's a lovely place to hang out on a hot day. And the reason it does that is because of all the plants, and particularly layers of plants. You saw in that video that we had lots of little small plants down near the ground, some medium-sized stuff, and then some big trees as well. What happens is those trees are soaking up the water, or all those plants are soaking up the water. It comes up through their branches into their leaves, and then actually is evaporated from their leaves. This is called transpiration. Transpiration is just a big fancy word that means evaporation that happens from the leaves. The water is turned from water in the leaves into water vapor and taken up into the sky. Now, interesting thing about that reaction, that chemical process of evaporating water, makes it cool down. It's called exothermic. That means that it makes it colder, the air around it. Now, this only is a benefit to us if it's close to where we are. If you imagine a big tree with its huge canopy way above our heads, well, if all that transpiration, all that evaporation is happening way above our head, it might be cooling down the air, but it's cooling down the air way above us instead of down where we are. When you have layers of plants, like I do around me now, that transpiration is happening at all levels, and we get to feel that cooling effect where we are just now. That means that we can use plants to cool down our gardens, our homes, our schools, and even our streets. But we have to make sure we've got all these different layers of plants. It's one of the reasons why our botanic gardens is a lot cooler than the park just across the road, because that park has a big playing field and very tall trees. So we tend to find it's cooler here on a really hot day than it is just across the road. Now, this is not the only way that we are using plants here at the Botanics. Another way I wanted to tell you about was something called a living roof. We've got a photo of that to show you. Our living roof is on what's called our Gateway building. The Gateway is a brand new building that we built. It's got our cafe in it, our shop, it's got a big exhibition space, and it has a big flat roof where we planted a bunch of plants. Now, having a living roof is great just for biodiversity, right? You put plants there, lots of insects love the plants, lots of animals love the plants, lots of plants love to grow there. It's a wonderful way to have a garden on top of your building. But it also can help us with some of those things we've been talking about today. And I want you to have a think and have a vote in your class. Do you think I want you to give me a thumbs up if you think it is helping us to manage the water here at the Botanics. Is it helping us to deal with flooding and to reduce the amount of water that's happening? Or is it using for cooling? Is it helping to cool down the building? So a thumbs up for water and a heart if you think it is for cooling. I'm going to let you do some voting in the chat and see what you think. What do we think? We got anything, any ideas coming? Or you can pop in the chat if you think it's something different entirely. Hmm. Let's see. Oh, we've got some thumbs up. Very good, very good. Yeah, thumbs up. So you think that it's for water, that those plants will be absorbing some water. Any other ideas, anyone? If you're struggling to find those emojis, then you can also just type it in. Oh, we've got a heart. Someone thinks it's for cooling. We've got some thumbs, some hearts. Oh my goodness, lots of different ideas coming in. Oh, someone said both. Someone said water. Aha. Oh my goodness, so many great ideas coming in right now. Now, a couple of classes have seen through my evil plan. I actually asked you a bit of a trick question there because you're all right. It actually helps with both. Having the plants on the roof does exactly what those stormwater planters do, but it's already on the roof. It's absorbing that water, holding on to it, meaning it doesn't end up in our drains. But it's also transpiration is happening, that evaporation of water from the leaves of our plants. And so it helps to cool down the building as well. So actually, a living roof does both of the things we've been talking about today. It helps us manage the water here at the Botanics, and it helps us cool down our buildings. So it's a really great way to do both of those things at once. Fantastic. Really, really well done. You guys did amazing. Now, I've told you lots of different ways that plants can help us here at the Botanics, and this was just a few of the ways. There are so many more nature-based solutions. And to finish up today, I want to invite one of our senior horticulturists here. He's called Duncan Young, and he's going to come and answer some of your questions. So if you have any questions about nature-based solutions, about plants, or anything like that, we've got them for Duncan. Just while you're thinking about that, I'm going to start us off, and I'll start you off with a reasonably easy question, I hope. What's your favorite thing about your job?
It's probably working outdoors is the best thing about being a horticulturalist because you get to see all the plants throughout the season. So you get to experience plants coming up in spring, summer, the change of color in autumn that we're starting to experience now. And then even in winter, when we get rainy days, snowy days as well, it's always exciting to see how the garden looks in these kind of conditions and stuff like that. It's very exciting.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's a lovely one. Oh, fantastic. We've got some questions coming in already. So what plants are really thirsty and would be good to include in flooded areas?
Thirsty plants. So plants like hosta. So that's a sort of a big leaf. Is sort of they're sort of just described as like cabbages almost. So they've got these big fleshy leaves that are good at sucking up moisture as well. One plant that you see out in the wild quite a bit is meadowsweet, which is Philopendula. You tend to see that on like really wet sort of road verges and stuff like that. You'll see it if you go out and about driving with whoever your parents or whatever. You'll start to see these plants start to appear all up through the sort of road verges and stuff like that. These are two sort of great plants for sucking up moisture for your rain gardens and areas like that.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Good example.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh my goodness, so many questions come in. So what's your favorite plant?
Oh,
Maybe a harder question than I thought.
I'll give you an autumn plant. So the one plant that I like at the moment is a tree called the Katsura tree, and it's called Cercidophyllum japonicum. Because when the leaves start to fall off in autumn, it smells like candy floss or like burnt sugar. So if you're ever in the garden here at this time of year, if you're walking around, you'll start to smell things like candy floss or burnt sugar, and that's the Cercidophyllum just losing its leaves. It produces this lovely scent. So a good tree for this time of year.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Absolutely. Oh, someone is asking what animals do we have here in the garden?
So we've got a good variety of animals. So we've got grey squirrels, we've got ducks, we've got moorhens that live in our pond. We've got a resident heron who you quite often see up in the trees as well. We've known to see kingfishers in the garden. We have some badger sets. So we've got some groups, some families of badgers that are living here in the garden as well. And you do get the occasional cat from some of the neighboring gardens as well. And we've been known to see a fox or two as well. So a good variety of birds and stuff as well, all living throughout the trees. Quite often you can hear the woodpecker going some mornings as well. So he's hammering away on some of our trees as well. So you can quite often hear that when you're walking through the garden.
Brilliant.
Nice. It's good to, especially when the garden's closed these early hours, you can really hear the nature when there's less public and stuff. It's a nice
Yeah.
Nice time for the garden as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I went on a spring bird walk in the garden this year,
Yeah,
and I think we spotted about 24 species of birds in about half an hour.
Yeah, it's good.
So it's fascinating. And it just shows how great this biodiversity is for nature. It's just you plant lots of different plants, you'll get lots of different animals as well, which is really lovely. It shows that kind of interactivity and that biodiversity. Brilliant. Oh my goodness. So many questions coming in. How much water do most plants need? Oh, that is an interesting question, and I don't know if there's a good answer for it.
So here in Scotland, it's probably during the summer, we would need to maybe look to, with climate change and stuff, we're getting hotter summers and drier periods. So we are starting to look to irrigate certain plants, but most mature plants have got deep root systems into the ground. So they can sort of manage themselves. So the trees and larger shrubs, they're okay. Some of the more like herbaceous plants, so these plants that sort of come up, flower, do their thing all in the 1 year, these plants can tend to dry out a bit if we get these really hot, long periods. We haven't really seen it this summer, so we've not had to water too much. But on some previous summers, we've had to do a bit of sort of irrigation, so setting up some hoses and stuff like that around the garden, just to make sure these plants have got all the water that they need. I wouldn't have said there's a definitive number on how much water plants need, but usually you can start to look at plants and see if they've got stress signs. So on certain plants, like leaves will start to curl or they'll start to like dry up, and that's when the plant's telling you that it needs a drink of water. So it'll be the same if you're doing things like growing vegetables or fruit at home or whatever, or any plants that you grow in pots. You can start to see these signs of, I need a drink now.
Yeah,
Can I
start
get
to wilt a little,
the
don't they?
wilting as well?
Yeah.
These are the signs to look out for when
Brilliant.
plants need water.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about that in the rain garden. And actually, one of the great things about those stormwater planters is you can have a planter and it waters itself because it's the drain pipes watering it for you. So you don't have to remember. So that's
that reservoir of water.
They're ready to go. Absolutely. Oh, how many varieties of plant do we have here at the Botanics?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's a lot.
Thousands. So, I mean, I couldn't guess at a number per se. We could definitely get back to you with that number, but I mean, in our herbarium, we've got 3 million specimens in our herbarium. So the herbarium is our pressed plant collection. So we've got 3 million pressed plant collections, and then
14,000.
Yeah, probably like 14,000 plants out in the garden.
Oh my goodness.
Right, yeah.
That is a lot, isn't it?
A lot,
It's a lot of different plants.
Well,
absolutely.
Keep track of, yeah.
Oh my goodness. My goodness, there's so many things. What plants are best to grow in the summer?
Plants to grow in the summer. So probably your sort of even things like wildflower mixes. So your wildflowers and herbaceous plants, they tend to do their thing in the summer. So they come up, they start to shoot up in spring, they put it on their leaves, and then they'll probably flower around about summertime. So we have our big herbaceous border in the garden. That's in like full flower in sort of June, July into August as well. So these herbaceous plants are probably good things to put in your summer garden. Even things like roses are quite good plants for sort of summer flowering as well. These are plants that I would have in my garden in summer. For sure. Yeah.
What a good question. Yeah. Someone was asking how long you've worked at the garden.
So I've been at the garden for 12 years now. So I started off here in the garden when I was about 18 years old, and I was an apprentice for 2 years. Then I went away and studied and got my degree, and then I used to work in the nursery for about 4 years, growing the plants from seed and propagating plants, all the mature plants that we have here in the garden. And then I just recently got a job in the herbaceous team. So that's where I am now. So 12 years of being in the garden. It's
amazing.
It's a good long period. It's been nice. It's been to see the garden change over the years as well has been really, really interesting as well. It's been good.
Brilliant. Yeah. Someone has asked what our biggest plant is.
Our biggest plants?
Must be one of the trees.
It's a tree. So we have some of the giant redwoods up in the rock garden area. They're probably our tallest trees, that's for sure. We do have what are called champion trees in the garden. So These are some of the biggest. They are the biggest trees of that species in the UK. So these plants get a special blue label to signify that they are the biggest tree in the UK that we know of, anyway.
Oh, brilliant. So that's something to
Yeah.
look out for if
Yeah.
you come visit the garden. Look out for those blue signs on them, the blue labels on them, and you can spot some of those champion trees. All right, we're going to do just a couple more questions. I know there have been lots and lots of questions, but don't worry. If we've not answered your question, we'll go through them all and we'll try and write answers to you so we've
Definitely.
got them all. Someone's asking, do we grow food at the garden?
Do we? Yeah, we do. So we have an area in the garden called the demonstration garden, and it's here where we grow lots of vegetables and lots of herbs and stuff, which is all used to then go into our cafes and restaurants. So we grow food here. We have about 3 members of staff, I think, who are involved in all the food growing and stuff like that. And then quite often, if we've got a surplus of food as well, I believe they go out to sort of other communities as well, and they deliver food there as well. So yeah, we grow a good amount of food. So mainly sort of vegetables and stuff. That's probably our bread and butter, to pardon the pun.
Amazing. Someone's asked, what is the smelliest plant we
The
have?
smelliest plant. So this summer, in the glasshouses, we had a plant called Amorphophallus titanium flower, and that's considered probably one of the smelliest plants. So it lives in one of our glasshouses, and when you walk in the door, you can smell it immediately because it's in that enclosed environment. It takes up the whole area, and I think it's been described to smell as things like rotting flesh and stuff like that. So it's definitely a smelly plant. That's
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
I feel like there's definitely a kind of fishy, moldy cheese,
It's
smelly
not nice.
stalk.
It's not nice.
Yeah.
If you get a chance to come see that in the glasses when it's in flower, keep an eye on our website and you'll get to see when it's in flower and stuff like that. It'd be good.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Duncan. It was so lovely
No problem.
to have you come and join
Yeah.
us. Sorry we didn't get to everybody's questions, but we'll definitely try and write any answers. Some of them looked quite tricky, so I'm going to have to do some research to find out the answers to them. But yeah, thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank
Amazing. Cheers.
you.
All right, everyone. So and thank you so much for joining us. All that's left for me to say is that if you've enjoyed this, we do lots and lots of amazing different online events, and we have lots of online learning resources. One I really want to highlight is called Plant Kind. Plant Kind is a resource where you can go on and see what other schools have been doing to help plants and to help fight climate change. So you can see actual actions that people have taken to get inspiration, or if you think you're doing something in your school that you think we could share on there, I would love to hear from you and we can include you in that resource. I'll make sure that is sent out to you guys so you can have a look at it. And that's all that's left to say. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to pass back over to Kat now.
Thank you so much, Eve. That was so amazing to see all the work that you're doing in the garden and to learn about all the different kinds of plants. I can't believe you've got 3 million plants in your herbarium. That's a lot of plants.
It is.
And I'm going to have to come and see this stinky flower. It's going to have to happen. After that description, I can't resist. I need to go and see this.
Absolutely.
But thank you for the garden tour and for telling us all about your work. That was amazing. And you've managed to stay relatively dry too, which is also impressive.
Yes, absolutely.
So thanks to Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh, we have a resource for you. I'd like to, first of all, thank Eve for today's lesson and all her helpers behind the scenes as well. We hope you can now see the importance of plants for helping us to manage climate change around our homes. Your next challenge is to go to complete the rainwater calculations activity that Eve has left with us. This resource can be found on our Climate Action Week webpage. And my colleague Nicola is going to put the link in the chat for you, but it should also be in your email. There are separate resources for early and upper second level pupils. So you use what you find to continue designing your sustainable home. I also really think the Plant Kind resource that you're talking about, Eve, sounds amazing and would really like to share that with our pupils as well, because I think that's something that they could really use.
Yes, absolutely. I'll make sure there's a link for that. I'll
Thank
see if
you
I
so
can find
much.
it right now.
Don't forget this week you get to finish designing your sustainable home, and remember to send your designs to us to enter our competition to win some books for your school. The deadline for competition entries is the 4th of October, and any designs sent in by 3 p.m. today will also be included in our assembly tomorrow. Coming up next week, we have our friends from Butterfly Conservation to join us and talk about making connections with nature and also the importance of planting for butterflies. Surprisingly, autumn is the best time to sow a meadow for butterflies, and is so important just now. I don't know if you've seen in the news about Butterfly Conservation declaring a butterfly emergency, but it's very important that we work to protect these very small creatures because they're very helpful. If you have any more questions for Eve, I know you've put so many in the chat, please send them to us and we will try to have the answers for as many of them as possible for our assembly tomorrow. I can read them out to you. I would like to know the answers to some of those myself. You ask some very clever questions. Thank you so much for those. And as always, we always look forward to seeing your amazing work throughout the week. We love showcasing your work on in assemblies on Fridays, but also we just love it when you pop into our emails and say hello and tell us what you think about the live lessons that we've been doing for you. Tell us about what you're doing for your Eco Schools work, and share with us things that you're doing in your school that are that you've learned from the lessons. So please share anything that you're doing for Climate Action Week. You can share it with us on social media or in our emails, and we will share your posts from public accounts only at our assembly tomorrow. And also, we would very much value your feedback on our live lessons. Telling us what you think only helps us to improve what we can offer you. So if you wouldn't mind, please complete this very short feedback survey that my colleague Nicola is going to put in the chat for you, to tell us what you enjoyed and what you'd like to see more of. And we would like to hear from pupils and educators alike. So please, if you don't mind, please tell us your feedback. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Eve, for standing outside in the rain.
No problem.
We hope to see everyone tomorrow at our assembly. We will be revisiting all of the concepts that we learned throughout this week, answering some more of your questions sent to our guests, and displaying all of the lovely work that you are sending in to us. But that's all we have time for today, so bye for now.